Good morning, Trinidad and Tobago, and welcome to the Bourse Report. Well, today we're taking a look at that much discussed topic over the past week for many citizens and investors alike. We're talking, of course, about the fiscal 2022 budget. Now, there were a range of reviews and general sentiments ranging from optimism to disbelief. But today we're taking a look at specifically from an investor focus on what might be in it in terms of opportunities along the fiscal 2022 budget year. So we'll get straight into it. And firstly, just a very general overview in terms of that budget that was read. Generally, the revenues are expected to come in at around 43.3 billion, which is a very significant 6.3 billion increase from the 37.1 billion recorded in the prior fiscal year, or estimated of 37.1 billion as mentioned. Now, that 43.3 is where perhaps some of the disbelief is coming in, given that the forecast revenues for fiscal 2021 were initially for just over 41 billion. So there was a roughly $4.3 billion shortfall in fiscal 2021. So perhaps some questions being asked about whether or not revenues will really come in at over 43 billion for the fiscal 2022 period. No surprises in terms of expenditure hovering around that $50 billion level. The fiscal gap is expected to be 9.1 billion, which is still a very significant fiscal deficit with growth projections of just around 5% in terms of real GDP growth for the upcoming fiscal year. Now, what can investors expect in terms of specific opportunities? Well, first, no pun intended, there is the additional public offering that was announced first, whereby the government intends to sell or raise approximately $550 million in revenues via the sale of 10.87 million odd shares of First Citizens Bank Limited, which is soon to undergo a corporate legal restructuring, which will have no impact on the company whatsoever in terms of the value of the share. That would translate into a price per share based on the numbers given of an estimated $50.60, so perhaps at the higher end of the trading range of First since it was initially listed way back in 2013 or thereabouts. The date of this additional public offering is still to be determined, and as we can see, post-offering of that 4.3% odd in terms of ownership of the overall First Citizens Bank or First Citizens Group, the government's ownership would reduce to just around 60.1%, with just around 40% in total going into public hands. So that's something that investors might be looking forward to in the upcoming fiscal year. Another potential initial public offering on the cards would be that of the newly merged or soon to be newly merged Trinidad and Tobago Mortgage Bank, which is a merger between TTMF and the Home Mortgage Bank of Trinidad and Tobago. That merger completion is set to be complete, according to the Honourable Minister of Finance, in the first half of fiscal 2022. So before March 2022, by all accounts as of now. And the merger would have already been approved by both the boards of TTMF and HMB. Now, the combined equity of this merged entity based on their fiscal 2020 annual reports would be just around $2.3 billion, with total assets in combination of just around $7.5 billion. By our estimates, the government's holdings would be between $500 to $600 million in value, depending on what price they would offer to the market at. And the total shareholding, again, based on Bourse's estimates at this point in time, would put the government shareholding at just around 25.6%. The Honourable Minister of Finance announced the intention to offer all of the government's holdings in the merged entity. So, of course, that means just around 25% odd of the TTMB is going to be offered, or maybe offered to the public, general public, if our estimates are correct. The price and timing, of course, are still to be determined in terms of price per share and timing, but investors would certainly hope to add another option to an increasingly diverse investment menu in fiscal 22 by way of the TTMB IPO. Another very interesting development for investors is the enhancement or further incentivization of retirement savings, where the annual allowance for all approved funds and schemes, including retirement funds, pension funds, deferred tax or annuity plans, etc., would have been increased from $50,000 annually to $60,000 annually. And again, that is really trying to encourage persons to take their own financial future into their own hands by generating a tax shield today. And by way of tax shield, the tax shield would have increased from just around $12,500 annually. If you are maxing out your contributions currently at around $50,000 annually, that tax shield would increase to just around $15,000. And this is assuming that you have or are subject to a personal income tax rate of 25%. So certainly some things to look forward to by way of opportunities and incentivizations. At the broader level, there are certainly several considerations to take into account, which will affect not just those new investment opportunities, but some of those existing investment avenues which investors currently enjoy: property taxes, the Revenue Authority, the review of utility rates, including power and water, the fuel market liberalization, where we move to floating rates, and electrification incentives, all could have a broader impact on how investor sentiment, the cost of living, and access to foreign exchange, etc., are all considered in the eyes of the investor. Now, it's pretty much too much to talk about in this very short space or segment. So if you've got some time later this week, around Wednesday at 2 p.m., why not join us for a complimentary webinar, Budget 2022 Investor Musings, where Sarodh Ramkhelawan will be taking you through some of Bourse's perspectives as to what investors might expect in the year ahead. Well, that's it for this week's edition. For more information, you can give us a call at 226-8773, email us at invest@boursefinancial.com, or check out our website at bourseinvestment.com. And of course, you can catch us in today's business section of the Bigger, Better Trinidad Guardian newspaper. Well, stay safe. Hope to see you on Wednesday at our webinar. Get vaccinated, and see you next week on the next edition of the Bourse Report.